Sure. So the idea for me is coming from being a preschool teacher and then becoming a mental health consultant. I really had so much passion around seeing the child behind the behavior. So many times, including for myself as a preschool teacher, I would look at the form of behavior, the biting, punching, kicking, pinching, withdrawing, going selectively mute, whatever the form of the behavior, what we can see. And I would choose a strategy, an intervention based on the form. And I felt like I was working in circles, and I felt like, oh, I'm working harder, not smarter. So my series, my trainings are all based on the concept of seeing the child behind the behavior. Not as easy as it sounds, but attunement is one way for us to begin that process. Let's see if I can get it to go. It is not advancing.
I'd help you, but I can't.
That's okay. Let me see. I was playing with it earlier. It was doing fine.
And anytime too, guys, if you do have a question, put it in the chat, even if you want to just wait a little bit and see what she's got to share with us. But if you can think back to yesterday when we were talking about one of the strategies to help children feel seen is to be attuned. So yeah, all right, we're ready.
Thank you, Christy. So the interesting part about that word seen too is there's a difference between observation and perception. And there's a famous Japanese samurai swordsman who says, perception is weak, observation is strong. And I do whole trainings on this with coaches predominantly. But the idea is we may think we see the child, but are we really observing the child? So we see with our filters, with our previous held beliefs, with our perceptions, our values. It's just part of humanity. We'll never get away from that. But when we talk about being attuned, we're really talking about pausing to notice what is. And that's really hard. Our brain wants to be predicting what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, what's going to happen. And then our mind, which is our thoughts, values, perceptions, beliefs, our mental activity, comes in and says, oh, I already know what's going to happen, or I already know what this child's about, or here's what I'm observing, but it's really what we're perceiving. So attunement is something that people might gloss over, but it's really, really important and powerful. And there's when I talk about attunement, I talk about two components of attunement. There's the interpersonal attunement, I-N-T-E-R, the first one you see, and then intrapersonal attunement. I-N-T-R-A, that means intra means within. So for interpersonal attunement, adults, with children, we pause to notice with curiosity and openness what the child's perspective is. In this moment, we can see the form of the behavior, the form of what the child's doing, but what is going on behind the behavior? What are the child's thoughts in this moment? Their decisions, their feelings, their perceptions, their beliefs, any images they're having, and interestingly, their body sensations. A lot is going on. We're talking a lot in the field about trauma in the past 5-7 years. It's really amplified. And in trauma work, what we know as therapists later on, a lot of the work I do with people who have experienced trauma is helping them release the bodily sensations. The body keeps the score is the name of a famous trauma book. So when we are attuning to children, we don't want to just look at the form of the behavior. We want to see the child behind the behavior and consider what is the child thinking, perceiving, feeling emotionally, and sensing physically.
And Laura, I know you're going to go there, but I want to plant the seed.
Totally.
Because our knee-jerk reaction, if we're like, yeah, I would like to know what's going on in that little mind or that body. Our habit is to ask a question.
That's right.
And so if you'll make a little note, we'll put a pin in that about if I ask, well, what are you thinking? Or what are you afraid of? Or what are you worried about? Or what happens when I go to questioning? Because you said to be curious and you said to figure out what's going on. Why wouldn't I ask a question?
Sure. And sometimes you do, spoiler alert, but not always. So, really good. So in order to have that curiosity though, That's a hard thing, because when a child is throwing a chair across the room, curiosity isn't your go-to state of mind, right? It's not like, that's interesting. So I don't mean that. I mean curiosity in the sense that you remain open and receptive to understanding the child behind the behavior, seeing the child behind the behavior. And to do that, this is what we have to first start with, is being intrapersonally attuned. What's my state of mind? What are my sensations, feelings, thoughts, images right now? What are my beliefs about this child? And as a coach, I go into infant, toddler, preschool classrooms all the time. I go into elementary and high school too, but mostly 0 to 5. And I go in and they say, hey, he's my biter, he's my runner, she's my hitter, he never sits at circle. We have preordained beliefs and understandings and narratives about children, and that's okay if they don't limit us. If in this moment we understand that our intrapersonal biases may impact how we are able to observe this child. We may be perceiving this child and not observing this child. So intrapersonal attunement is about the adult attuning to oneself, so I can interpersonally attune with a child with more validity and reliability. Now, the other piece of intrapersonal attunement is when I, Laura, interpersonally attune to Jacob, the 4-year-old, I'm helping him, Jacob, intrapersonally attune to his interior landscape, because we're both going to have a shared gaze about that. So inter and intra, really important. Questions about that?
Did you guys catch that last part, that we're helping children develop their own ability to have intrapersonal, to notice what's going on inside themselves? So we are noticing what's inside ourselves. We're teaching them how to do that same noticing and being curious with openness and receptivity. But then we also do that through being attuned interpersonally. Like, that's a lot of words. Anybody
Laura,
want to give a try? Want to say it back?
Laura, I was just going to have a question. When we're intrapersonal, like assessing ourselves, but that's also helping a student understand themselves inside, are we talking out loud then? Like, how are we actually teaching? I mean, because yes, we're understanding ourselves to help us better understand the child, but what kind of, and I know this is kind of like the questions too, do we actually ask questions, or were we modeling? So what are we saying when we're going through that process?
Yeah.
Good, Leanne.
So great question. Let's go to this. Okay. So the first part of your question was, when we're intrapersonally attuning adults, are we naming that aloud? Probably not, but possibly. If it benefits the child, you may do that. It's more of a self-regulation check for you. So to be able to be attuned with openness and curiosity with a child, you have to make sure you're in your integrated brain, right? Dan Siegel's integrated brain. So if you flipped your lid and you're reacting from the downstairs brain, attunement's going to sound like you're angry, you're upset, you're judging, you're dismissive, you want to fix the child. So attunement isn't judging the child as bad or in a rush to fix the child. Attunement is considering the child's perspective. Even though you might not like the form of the behavior, the thoughts, the perceptions, the beliefs, the feelings, we need to co-regulate those. We need to help the child with those. So intrapersonally, I can't do that if I'm in a reactive state of mind. So one thing you can do is you can do a practice that Dan Siegel calls SIFT, S-I-F-T. You can sift your mind first. You tune in and notice, just as a scanning, you don't say it out loud, what are my body sensations, S? What images might I be having? Oh my gosh, the classroom's gonna get out of control. Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to get this child to bed. Oh my gosh, licensing's gonna come. What feelings might I be having? Annoyed, frustrated, disappointed, scared, overwhelmed. And what thoughts might I be having? I'll never be able to handle this. I'm out of control too. What if other kids get hurt? So that's one way, just to kind of scan and find out where you're at. and then to offer yourself a deep breath or some comfort and say, I got this, I understand this, I'm okay right now, I can handle it. No wonder I feel scared and disappointed. This is scary.
Laura, will you say each of the letters one more time?
Absolutely. S is sensation. That's a physical sensation. We're not good at that. It's called interoception. It's our sixth sense. Five senses, you know. Sixth is interoception, the sense of what is our body feeling like. And again, remember, trauma, body keeps the score. So if we can get to these kids at 0 to 5 and have them start developing interoception, less people in my office later on as a therapist. Interoception, sensations, images. So images for us might literally be pictures in our mind. They might be memories. They might be pictures of what might be coming, pictures of what might have already happened, just our imaginings. Same with kids. They can have pictures, but as they get older, they get more and more pictures. Early on, 0 to 2, they don't have a lot of visual pictures, but they will start to have imaginings, wonderings. They have imagination. F is feelings, T is thoughts. Interior landscape, mental activity. This is all from interpersonal neurobiology, Dan Siegel.
So to Leanne, go ahead, Leanne, go ahead.
I was just going to ask kind of if you're going through SIFT through a child, because you're reacting and you're going through, you're trying to tune to yourself, your interpersonal, if you talk out loud when you're going through your feelings, when you're going through F, is that hurtful to the child? If you're going through your feelings, like right now, I am feeling this.
Great question. That's a really good question.
And I'm going to piggyback on it, so I'm going to put a pin. Go ahead.
Yeah, it can be beneficial if you're doing it for the child. So here's the thing is we want to make sure we're child first. So us getting self-regulated is helpful for the child, for sure. But if it becomes about, hey child, look at me, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling this, that's more of the same for them. Public education is very much teaching us as little humans to attune outward, to interpersonally attune. We don't get a lot of intrapersonal. Learn the numbers, learn the colors, learn the patterns, learn the shape. Look how you made him feel. Look what you did to him. And I'm really passionate about adding in the intrapersonal attunement because I've got people my age in my office where I ask them, how do you feel? What do you think? They don't know because we don't ask. So we very much can say, I would start with the child. Looks like you may be feeling, looks like you might be thinking, gee, I wonder if you're really frustrated because you couldn't get the magnet tiles. There's no more. So we tune into them first. And then you might say, I'm feeling frustrated too. I don't know what to do right now, right? So that's the place where I would really choose to start with them and have it to become a shared gaze. Whew, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now and you're feeling really angry. Yeah. We're both having strong feelings. I wonder what we could do. Does that make sense, Leanne? Okay.
And so I'm going to piggyback on that real quick, Laura, because you said a couple important things that I want to make sure that people had time to take a note about it. So self-talk is a phrase that we sometimes use, especially any of you that are preschool or using the class. So self-talk can be important, but I want you to notice what Laura said. And there's two things. One, we don't want this child to ever be responsible for our feelings. So we got to be careful that our self-talk isn't, you're making me sad right now, or you're doing that and that's really hurting my feelings. Like we got to be really careful that if that's our habit of saying those things, that our self-talk script is one that's actually modeling intrapersonal awareness, attunement, and modeling that they're not responsible for how I feel. That's piggybacking on the other thing she said is that maybe in that moment, what that child, remember we're talking about they need to feel seen. Well, if it's all about me, I might be modeling how to do it, but the child doesn't even feel seen yet. So if I can say what I think they're thinking, what I think that, or I wonder what they're feeling, now it's all about them. And I don't run into that slippery slope of possibly saying it in a way that makes them feel responsible. And also, bonus, they feel seen because I'm in some way making the storyline about them.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Christy. And when Dan Siegel talks about, and Tina Payne Bryson talk about those 4 S's, the first being seen, what they also mean by being seen is the child feels felt. The child feels felt. So to just say, I see you are X, Y, and Z isn't really getting at the essence of what it means to experience being seen. It's not enough for you just to describe their actions aloud. Being seen calls upon us to go deeper than that and to really consider that child's interior landscape. It's not just our eyes, it's our heart. It's attunement is a very heart-centered thing. So the problem is if we flipped our lids, it's very hard for us to tap into that compassionate gaze. It is really hard. I've been there. I've been a preschool teacher, been a parent. It is hard when someone's spitting at you, kicking, hitting you, and you've got 25 kids in the room. It is not an easy thing. But to just say, just because you say to someone, I see you really want the blocks, but it's cleanup time and da da da, that's not attunement. That's not attunement. That's the way we normally talk. And that's not bad, but it's not attunement. So if you, it's first of all, anytime you say, I see you're feeling really upset, or I see you're really wanting to go someplace, or I see, but you undermine what you just said prior. So we don't want to butt and should on kids. Butting. So if you came home from work today, well, obviously we're at home working, but if you said to your partner today, I really had a hard day. It's really frustrating. I really am tired of being on Zoom all day. And your partner said, oh, that makes sense. But you're lucky to have a job, right? So that doesn't feel really attuned. It just feels like, oh, okay, I better rush to fix it. Yeah. So this interpersonal attunement calls upon us to go deeper and not just describe what we see, but really drop into a sense of, oh, all right, I feel you. I feel what you're feeling. I'm feeling with you. And so
Laura, sorry, we have 2 questions. Casey
Yep.
has a question and Cameron has a question. So let's do that. Casey, you go first and then Cameron.
What I'm taking from it is like the notion of the depth and the importance of the depth on it. And I was wondering if you had any suggestions or strategies that we could use, because like in my room, we do a daily SEL check as a part of our morning calendar, where we've got the little pictures with the emotional expressions, the children's faces, and every kid takes a turn if they want and talks about their feeling a little bit through the course of the day. But it's always, it's right before calendar and right after colors. And I was wondering if you had any strategies for some way we could make an activity like that have some more depth to it.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the way that is the most powerful activity for a child to learn this stuff is for you to do it in vivo, in the moment. So there's 4 conditions for optimal learning. 1 is focal attention. 2 is novelty. 3 is repetition. And 4 is emotional arousal.
Let's do them one more time. Focal attention.
Novelty, repetition, and emotional arousal. That's the brain's 4 primary conditions to learn something. So if we want them to learn about their feelings, circle time, group time is the worst time to learn it. I'll say that again. Learning at circle time is not optimal for children. It's like us trying to learn rocket science at a Britney Spears concert. There's too much going on. There's too distraction. It's too distant from me. We have been taught at teachers to teach at circle time. That's not your fault. That's what we've been taught, but it's not optimal. Brain scientists know. So as they're at lunch or snack or during free choice or during outside time, if you tune in to their emotions and ask for an emotion check then, or describe their emotion then, that's your money. That's where you're helping them learn. Because in the moment, you're having them consider, drop into the moment how they're feeling to them or to them and another person, describing their actions aloud, describing their feelings aloud, asking an open-ended question about what they might be thinking, feeling, deciding. So not just when they're having challenging behavior, right? When they're actually just throughout their day, whoa, looks like you two are building a huge tower. You look super excited. Did I get that right? Or you guys are building a tower, you've been working so hard. How do you feel? We're excited. Yeah, you look excited. You also look proud. You worked really hard.
Laura, give your example about like just even noticing that another kid needs materials.
Tell me.
Sorry, I could just say it, but you know, like how when you want kids to share, that you can even do
Oh it. Yeah. So so some child's playing, say, drawing with crayons, and then another child is coming up and is kind of standing there. It's like, hey, Jacob, what do you notice? And Jacob might be like, I'm drawing this picture. Yeah, and it looks like Alyssa's standing here too. What might she want? Oh, looks like she wants some crayons. What do you think we can do? What's your plan? So a lot of open-ended questions, instead of saying, Jacob, Alyssa wants crayons, you can share them. You need to share them. So we're actually asking children to drop in, to notice, to attune interpersonally with each other, and then intrapersonally, what's my plan? What could I do? And then how do I feel about it? And then the key piece is that you acknowledge children's efforts or actions afterwards. You shared the crayons, you're being really respectful. You look excited about that. You look proud of yourself. So when you talk about how do we do this with the group, it's the idea is you're carrying this idea of pausing to notice, acknowledge, be curious about throughout the day. And then your language reflects that. Instead of directions, corrections, reminders, you're walking into situations with openness and receptivity. Open-ended questions you can do for sure, but you can also describe their positive actions aloud and be curious about their positive actions aloud, including their emotions.
And so, Laura, we got to go to Cameron, but there's also an important question in the chat about safety. So we're going to come back to that.
Yeah.
All right, Cameron, do you remember yours? You'll need to unmute yourself if you.
I always forget that. So I guess my question was, is feeling felt the same as making an emotional connection with the child?
Yes. Easy answer. Nice. So feeling felt is like, you know how there's that saying, like colloquialism, hey man, you really feel me. You're really feeling me. You're getting me. You're connecting with me. Absolutely. So it's an emotional connection. It can be a physical connection. It can be a cognitive connection, and all of the above. It is the essence of really deep connection for sure. Nice, Cameron.
And so one of the things that we've been talking about, and you started to allude about the group dynamics, but oftentimes what we will all hear shark music about is safety. And a good number of the teachers and providers on this class kind of hang out in districts with very traditional perceptions around discipline and dealing with behaviors that are challenging. So the planned ignoring, the don't give the kid attention, they're throwing their Chromebook, ignore it, whatever. Can you talk a little bit about, like, if I'm sitting there doing SIFT, how am I also keeping the kids safe? And where's the line between stopping them because they're not safe, but being attuned to what they need?
Really nice. Good questions. So the idea is we have 3 levels for us to consider. We want to prevent challenging behavior by promoting social emotional skills, and then we intervene when necessary. So the challenge of a teacher and then of a parent, quite frankly, is to be navigating all 3 of those at once. So there's no simple answer of how to do that. It's planned, it's ongoing. So we plan our classroom so we have routines and schedules that are predictable yet flexible to allow for individuality, to include all children's needs. We have rules and expectations. We have logical consequences, and we have ongoing attuned interactions. So 2/3 of your work is prevention and promotion. But what people ask me about 99.9% of the times is the intervention. And my answers for intervention, how to keep people safe, what to do when it's unsafe, is to really go back to prevention and promotion. And then in the moment, intervention is very much foundationally attunement. Going, whatever your intervention is going to be, if you have to be in a district where there's behavior charts, say, your intervention is going to include that behavior chart. But how can you do that in an attuned way? Very hard with behavior charts, but how can you do whatever you're going to do in an attuned manner, to be considering not just getting rid of or stopping the challenging behavior, because that's working harder, not smarter. So there's also another, I mean, it just comes up all the time. It's like, what do I do if a child bites? What do I do if a child hits? And I always say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And it drives people crazy, but that's because I'm passionate about seeing the child behavior. When Jacob hits at circle time, I know what to do, but I might not know what to do when Jacob hits during free choice, because the context is different. Or when Cameron hits versus Alyssa hits. So it's not one size fits all. So creating a climate of safety in the classroom is about prevention, promotion, but it's also this attunement. Children's brains are scanning for signs of welcome and signs of warning. And if you as the adult are a sign of warning, you're going to have an unsafe classroom. Children are going to feel emotionally unsafe, and then they're going to act physically unsafe. So if you're shifting the culture of your classroom, the climate of your classroom or your home, to where it's a climate of openness and curiosity and acceptance, not for biting, pinching, hitting, running out of the room, but for the child's feelings, thoughts, bodily sensations, you're going to be able to create a climate of safety in the classroom. Not overnight. It builds and builds and builds. The child's brains have to start to be able to resonate with, this is a safe place for me. This is a safe place for me. And it's not just about what you create on the outside. It's about your engagement with the children.
So let's build on that a little bit. We're going to take Karen's question. So she wants you to talk a little bit about asking the class their feelings after seeing a child throw the chair across the room. So can you talk a little bit about I don't want you to have to be like talking about restorative justice and so forth, but there is always this question about the quote unquote bystanders and victims of the unsafe event, or the recipient of the biting or the kicking or the throwing. What do you talk about it being attuned to those kids and their needs?
Sure. I mean, I think if organically the kids are coming up and being like, whoa, or you notice that they were impacted. It's like, looks like that was pretty scary for you, huh? So you want to tell me about it? Yeah. Oh yeah. When Jacob was throwing the chairs, that was really, really scary, huh? It's hard sometimes in the classroom when people get really, really big emotions. So I wouldn't sit the whole class down and have a conversation. Again, I'm not a group. I mean, I just know that teaching in group is not as effective. And so I would do it more organically, and allowing the children to know that at any time they can come up to me and they can connect with me. And then I will be scanning for the ones that I know, or I think, or I'm perceiving or wondering they might have been really impacted. And that doesn't shame and blame Jacob. It's like, yeah, sometimes we all have big emotions and they can get scary, huh? They can be like big waves crashing over us. That's really frustrating. What do you need to feel safe right now? What do you think would help you?
Okay.
Or I wonder if it would help you if we X, Y, and Z.
And what about the other side, like, that we talk about the hypoarousal kids, because we often can think about the kid who's the biter, the kicker, the screamer, the refusal, but, and anxiety for me kind of can be red or blue, but what about a kid who withdraws, or a kid who kind of zones out, or appears unmotivated? Or even a child who's not yet using a lot of verbal communication. Can you give us a little bit of like, how do we talk to someone who's not really talking a lot back to us?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work with kids that go selectively mute. I mean, that happens a lot. They're talk at home, they're fine. But at school, there's no words. They have the skill, they just don't perform it. So I think you guys know about functional behavioral assessment. So is it a skill deficit or is it a performance deficit? So that child's brain is scanning and finding that there's signs of warning there, even when you think there might not be. But for that child, from the child's perspective, this doesn't feel safe. So for many children who prefer very small groupings, preschool or classroom settings are very scary. So it's just about creating that sense of inclusion for the child, but in a way that feels safe for her or him. So there could be verbal, you narrating for the child. Looks like you really just want to be on the side right now. That feels safer for you, or you feel more comfortable here, huh? And she can nod or he can nod, or they don't say anything, but you still can use that describing what you think their feelings or thoughts or perceptions might be allowed. You're still attuning, even if they don't say anything back. They're receiving the language. They're receiving your words. And if I work in San Diego down by the border a lot with Mexico, so a lot of times, luckily most of the care providers are bilingual, but sometimes they're not. And so they still will use English as their primary form of communication, even though the child's language is emerging, it's not fully developed yet. It's that attuned energy too. It's the body language, it's the head position, it's the pacing, it's the tone, it's are you down at their eye level? So there's so many ways to communicate signs of welcome versus signs of warning.
Okay.
With across hyper arousal, whatever it is.
And when you said, Laura, that there were the 3 levels to consider, was the prevent 1, the teach the SEL skills 2, and intervene 3?
Yeah, prevention, promotion, intervention.
Ah, got it.
Yeah, PPI, prevention, promotion, intervention. And the thing is and I don't want to go too far off trail here, but it's connected, especially if you're talking about the 4 S's, Christy. The brain is wired, the human brain is wired to scan for what's missing and what's wrong. We are wired that way, all of us. Even if you're not, you think like, well, I'm not a negative person. No, but our brain is wired to scan for that. It's an evolutionary adaptation, and it's important because it keeps us safe. But unfortunately, for most of us, it's overdone, that we're constantly scanning for what's missing and what's wrong. And in school classroom settings, it's really activated because you are charged with a really hard task, keeping 25, 35, 15, 10, I don't know how many in your classrooms, humans safe. That's really hard.
Okay.
So I like attunement also for the adult, seeing the adult behind the behavior, because it can help us stay regulated to not just be scanning for what's missing and what's wrong, but also scanning for what's going well and attuning to that. So attunement isn't just about when there's challenges. Attuning is to the good stuff too. Don't waste the good moments.
So Libby, I see your hand. So we're going to go to Libby next, but let's just say the prevention, promotion, and then the promotion is of social emotional skills like intrapersonal attunement or emotional literacy or self-regulation. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yep.
And then intervention. So the first P is prevention. And that's kind of, guys, when we talk about teach before the peak, or when Laura says be predictable and have classroom rules and routines and create a safe harbor, all of that stuff is prevention. Promotion is that we are actually teaching children coping strategies. We're teaching children emotional literacy. We're teaching children intrapersonal attunement, self-regulation, the management of energy and tension. And then we're intervening. That's when the lid is flipped and the child's in the red or the blue. And now we're going to once again use attunement as way back into the green. All right, Libby, go for it. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
One thing I totally missed on the attunement part is doing a good job within the classroom, but having a young child that you bring to school with you, or seeing all the behaviors. Is I had a child at home, but he saw all the bruises on me, but wasn't able to speak because I taught in a behavior program, and he didn't verbalize, but he saw, you know, as you get undressed, the bruising, the bite marks on mom. And then when he started to go to preschool with mom, he was seeing the physical aggression towards mom, and would start having those meltdowns in the classroom. We were having to remove my own child and put him in another room, but I wasn't getting that attunement into my own child until he was having that separation anxiety where he wouldn't leave mom. And when he started speaking out, it was because he was afraid mom was going to get too beat up. But I realized going home, he would start asking about all the bruises on mom and the bite marks. And it was really an eye-opener because really he was seeing mom being abused at school. And he still has those, you know, now we're home. He's still going into first grade, has anxiety because he's afraid of mom getting hurt at work because he has seen so much abuse and he's seen so much of the bruising and the bite marks and the bleeding. And it's hard because I was pregnant. He had to be born early because of the punching on the stomach, and he came early because of all that. And it's hard because I worked so hard on my classroom, I forgot about my own child.
So great awareness and just such a powerful narrative. And the message of hope within that is it's never too late. Is that Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryce's talk about name it to tame it. And when we help children tell the story of what's happening inside, so as a first grader at 6 or 7, continue to revisit and help him name and work through and integrate some of that experience to develop a coherent narrative. He can't fully understand it. I mean, we don't fully understand it, right? So it looks like abuse, and it's the child's emotional tsunami coming out in physical form. It feels abusive. Yes, you are left with bruises. So and it's really the child's huge, strong emotions and no way to be able to integrate them. And that's really scary for us as adults. And we've been on the planet a lot longer, but for that 6 or 7-year-old, really challenging. So never too late to go back and help them revisit, rename, integrate, and process. They don't have to relive. We don't want them to relive. We just want them to be able to name it, to tame it. So it's not too late now that you're realizing that. It's like, okay, great, I can continue to help him tell the story. And the onus is on the parent to not rush it. I know that, like, for me too, as a young parent, when my daughter was 2 and I was 25, is that when things would happen, I would try to rush her to happy. Oh, I don't want her to feel this emotional tension. And it's now we know through neuroscience, slow it down, help them name it, help them notice, stay with it, validate it. Not like, but it's okay now, mommy's okay now. No, it's like, that was really hard for you. That was scary. Yeah, you would see the bruises, huh? And you're still really worried. Yeah, that makes sense. It's really, really scary. It's hard to understand why kids would do that, huh? They're really struggling. Sometimes it's hard. And then you get to the message of resilience, the message of hope, which is, you know what? I'm learning more and more each day about how to help these kids. And I'm getting less and less hurt. And I'm going to work on less and less bruises. I'm safe at the end of the day. I'm okay. We're okay. But we don't rush to that. Does that make sense?
All right. Thank you, Libby.
I was just going to share it. Libby, that was very amazing that you shared that. Made me cry. But I work at a school that is a structured learning program. And it's integrated with a regular education program. And so kids see some of those behaviors and they have questions. And so it kind of goes in about the questioning about, do we sit with our kids and kind of talk about their feelings and tell me if it's, I mean, you say having that one-on-one discussion with them and to discuss their feelings. But I think having that group discussion so other kids can hear their feelings is important too, because you want to be able to, maybe one kid is feeling this, but another student's feeling this, but they make connections too with feeling that same way.
For sure. I think if you can find an organic way where they're invited to do that in a group versus they have to. We have to all sit down and do it. I'm just really protective of that. Because it can, in the long run, neurons that fire together, wire together. If early on in the child's educational career, they have some tension around having to do stuff like that, it can set the mental model for, I don't like school, I don't like all that. So it's a fine balance between forcing and inviting. And the other way to do that in a more organic way is, as they're playing, they tend to play in self-selected small groups, 2 or 3 kids. You have them share then. You have them share that, like, that was really scary, or it looks like we were fresh. Oh, and Marcus says, well, me too. I was feeling this. Oh yeah, me too. I mean, as they're doing Play-Doh, they're doing that. So it's not that you necessarily have to sit them down to do it in a large group, but you're right. Of course, it's really important, that peer-to-peer connection. Oh, you too? You were feeling that too? Oh, so it's not just me. Not just me is a really important way to feel included, belonging, and significance. Feeling seen by your peers is really important too. Yeah, really nice. But again, I want you guys to really consider the opportunity for ongoing efforts for social emotional connection throughout the day versus it's a unit that we do at one time of the day. Feelings don't just happen in a moment, they happen every single second. So there's an opportunity, trust yourselves, that you will be able to teach them this social emotional piece because it's happening every second. It's just up for us to be able to pause and notice and consider. And so that's why I offer SIFT, because it can be a very, it's a way to anchor us in, like, okay, I'm scanning for some physical sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts every single moment, see what's going on, the positive ones and the ones that might be challenging.
So guys, this is what I'd like to propose, if this is okay with everyone. It's 20 after, just about. So I'd like to see if there's something Laura is thinking about that, or had planned to share with us. I'm going to give her a minute to think about how she'd like to bring closure. And then I'm just going to propose that we end early today, that when Laura's kind of done and you're kind of done with us, there's just a little bit about being a stress detective, but I have tons of other resources already on that you're going to be experiencing. So we're just going to end with Laura today. I haven't given you guys a break, and your brains are like, shoom, and I can feel them. And I want you to have time to process and eat and move and enjoy that Alaska air. So let's go ahead. If you're just kind of thinking, well, I got to go to the bathroom. Can I wait 10 more minutes? Yeah, we're just going to go a few more minutes. We'll keep recording. You go ahead and hit the love you gotta go button anytime. But there won't be more content by me today. And then tomorrow we're starting at 10:30 your time. Okay. That's public service announcement. Sorry to disrupt the flow there, Laura, but
No, it's good.
All right, you take it away.
So one thing I just want to loop back to is that idea of questioning. Open-ended questions can be a way to attune to a child. So attuning can take, again, I do all-day trainings on attunement. I'm doing this in 45 minutes, but attunement can look like an open-ended question. If the quality of your voice, if your body language is sending a sign of welcome, if it's, what were you thinking? Or why did you do that? The why is often a signal to a child, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Traditionally, even if they've only been on the planet 2 or 3 years, why hasn't turned out well for them. So it's the quality of your why. And I often replace why with I wonder. I wonder is a very soft, it sends a signal of curiosity. I wonder what were you thinking then? Or I wonder what was going through your mind. Or it looks like you wanted that block and Jacob wouldn't give it to you. I wonder what you were feeling. So it's the quality of that open-ended question that can be really powerful. And just by the way, I'm a huge fan of open-ended questions when used with discernment because they build the upstairs brain. If we want children to have less challenging behavior, we have to be a brain architect and help them build their brain. The part of the brain that's not fully developed is this upstairs brain. Open-ended questions build the integrative fibers in the prefrontal cortex. So does attunement. One of the 9 functions of the prefrontal cortex that Dan Siegel talks about is attuned interactions, attunement. It's not just me. So attunement is a really powerful way to build children's brains and to help you stay in your integrated brain. So to see the child behind the behavior and to see the adult behind the behavior, we want to be able to focus on what does attunement look like for us? We aren't taught traditionally cross-culturally, cross-gender to intrapersonally attune. We're taught to interpersonally attune. So that's why the saying, he made me feel that way, exists. It's not true. No one can make you feel anything. You feel the way you feel based on other people's actions, based on your beliefs, based on your perceptions. But you and I can be in the same place, experience the same thing, and I feel something differently than you. So one person doesn't make you feel anyway. So we just haven't learned the quality of intrapersonally attuning to understand why we feel the way we do, and having compassion, non-judgment, and loving kindness for that.
Go ahead, Casey.
Laura, I was hoping to see if, do you know of any, like Christy's shown us all these awesome visuals, like almost like a little poster that synopsizes some of the philosophies in a way that's really easily communicated. And with the concept of the open-ended questioning to facilitate attunement, and how we frame those questions, and how just like a couple choices in the verbiage of the question can really impact the way you perceive the question, the way the other people around you perceive the question. What I want is something that's like a handout or some like synopsis of that I can give to families, or I can share with TAs in my program to kind of cultivate that framework. Is there anything like that that exists?
So Christy's super good at those infographics and all that, right? Like, I want to be Christy when I grow up, no question. So I can create something like that for sure. So let me check for understanding. Let me attune and check for understanding. So what I hear you saying is you're looking for a snapshot of the importance of open-ended questions when it comes to attunement, and that the quality of the open-ended question matters. So not only just what are some open-ended questions, because like when I was a class assessor, right, there's a lot of like, we're looking for the open-ended questions, and people would have them posted in different areas. What's your plan? How did you know that? What did you know? That's great, but it's not just, what did you notice? How did you feel? What was it? So that like, it's the quality of how you ask them. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And especially like when the most powerful thing that I took away from it was when you gave us that tidbit about I wonder instead of why.
Yeah.
You know, just like a little tool like that where it's just, you know, flip one W word for another W word, things like that. And I know this may be kind of kitschy or something, but little tidbits that are easily takeawayable to a struggling family or a TA whose behavior you're really trying to adjust to become more in tune with this classroom philosophy.
Yeah, gorgeous. So I wonder, looks like you maybe, seems like, all those kind of sentence starters that can signify signs of welcome to a child versus warning. Okay, I hear you. Yeah, I can work on that.
I'll help you. If you help me with the content, we can get the person to make it.
I can draw the pictures for you if you need, Christy.
Oh, that's true. Casey's a beautiful artist. We can collaborate. We got it.
I want to be him too when I grow up. Okay, yeah. So yeah, the only other thing I was going to share with you guys, if you want to take a picture of your screen, is just ways to stay connected with me if you want.